Hey Icon Collective family, how's it going? My name's James, and today we're going to be going over just a few different methods for sidechaining, compression, volume shaping, and a few other tips and tricks in there, and all the different ways you could sidechain, because there's a lot of them, and I'm going to cover a few in this video. That's only the beginning of it all, so experiment, play around with it. Here we have a nice little funky loop I got going. I don't know what else to call it, but I just decided to throw some things in there. First two loops I found, something to where we can clearly tell, the sidechain action going on. So I wanted to keep some groove and some bass elements here. All right, now we have some drums in the project. Excuse my horribly tasteless loop here. It is purely for demonstration purposes, I promise. So we do have some drums going on. The first method is compression. If we throw on a compressor here to the synths group, it's pretty simple. You can just open up the hood right here with this arrow, see what's going on under there, click on the sidechain, grab the audio input from 3, the drum rack. When grabbing the signal straight from the drum channel itself, I like to use the EQ feature just to kind of really dial in the sidechain, put the ratio all the way up, and really dial in your settings. I mean, I've gotten into a lot of arguments with people about sidechain settings, especially for compressors. Really find what works for you. I like to put the ratio just about all the way up, at least for synths and things with like bassy elements that I want to be completely sidechained. If you're doing something where you want more of an obvious pumping sound, so to say, and you don't want the signal to get cut out entirely, maybe play with the ratio some more, dial it back, play with the attack. I like to just throw the attack all the way back too and then really fine tune the release. But drag this threshold all the way down. I have a pretty obvious sidechain going on here. I can just drag this all the way up. Something super helpful that someone once showed me is setting the Ableton compressor to linear mode right there. It changes the way the compressor reacts to the signal, so to say. You will have to change your settings if you already have settings you like, but I find that it does produce a much cleaner sidechain. It cuts the signal a little bit better and more drastically than the logarithmic mode. You also play around with setting it to RMS. There's a few different things in there, but something also super helpful for seeing what's going on with sidechains, no matter what the method you're using is pulling open something like Smexoscope. It's free, definitely go grab it. You can literally see what's going on by soloing the channels. You can throw in your kick and then see the relationship between the two. Super helpful for metering and just dialing in those sidechains to be perfect. As you can see, mine definitely isn't here. We have just a little bit of like a weird ramping thing going on. Oh well, it happens. We can go back and fix that later. As with anything, it really comes down to just playing with it and fine-tuning the settings. You can even also use a glue compressor. I sometimes do this for hats. It's a little less drastic. Funny enough, glue compressor was the first thing I ever learned to sidechain with, but it's the exact same deal. Set it to your drum rack and really play with these settings. You can't really get an infinite ratio on here. It's gonna have a slightly different sound to it. I mean, nothing crazy. I definitely don't sidechain with this a ton anymore. You can also sidechain with Ableton's multi-band dynamics. Same deal, but if we are gonna talk about multi-band sidechaining, I'm going to show you all a cool little tip and something that I prefer over using Ableton's multi-band dynamics, and that is Pro MB. You can actually sidechain with Pro MB. It's pretty simple. What you do is create an audio channel. I like to just throw in a kick, something like that. And to create a trigger, I'll make sure the warp's off and just pitch it up. So it just makes a nice little click. And then I'll just throw these wherever the drums are going. Super simple. It's a little more annoying, and the method I'm going to show you all next is the method that I currently use. I like it a lot more than compression, but sometimes the project does call for compression. Now that we have this beautiful little click thing, we can send it over to our synths group. If we open up Pro MB, throw on a band, we can hop under here and select the external mode. And now, as you can see, whenever our trigger goes on, you can't hear it, but Pro MB is triggered. Now this is great for doing multi-band compression sidechaining, you can get really much more drastic cuts on the low end. If we just go in here, drag that threshold all the way down, the range, boom, boom, and then maybe something just a little less drastic for our high end here. How about that? But same deal, kind of go in with Smexoscope and see what's going on. Now I don't really sidechain with Pro MB a lot, though it does come in handy, to be honest. Next up, we have volume shaping, using tools like LFO Tool, Volume Shaper. I've used both. I personally prefer Volume Shaper, though you can do some cool filtering things with LFO Tool. I use it more as a creative effect, though, than a utility, so to say, for sidechaining. Now, how I set up my Volume Shaper is simple. I go over it in my tutorial video. Definitely check that out. It's also on this channel. But super simple to kind of cut to the point here. Just throw in an external instrument and send the MIDI to each instance of Volume Shaper. Put these instruments in a rack and just keep duplicating it to send it to each group. We can directly then copy and paste the MIDI from the drum rack that we're using here into the sidechain trigger. It's super helpful and makes it really easy to update your sidechain without copying a bunch of little like clicks to match each kick. You already know it's going to be matching perfectly because you're using the exact same MIDI sequence as you're using to trigger the drum rack. Now popping over in here, I have these volume shapers on every group, and just throw it open. Make sure to set it to the one-shot mode under MIDI so it knows to receive the MIDI. It's really just that simple. It's going. We can kind of draw in our sidechain shape here. Now something super cool about Volume Shaper that makes it a little bit easier than doing something like Pro MB for multi-banding. You can actually keep up to 3 bands in this thing. I usually only use 2, but this is super helpful. You can leave a lot of room for your kick and bass and get that relationship nice, sturdy, and make sure it's not clashing, while, you know, kind of leaving that room, so to say, to breathe in the high end without drastically cutting everything as much as your sub or the lower part of your mix. You can really let those things cut through a little bit more and slice out just the transient or just a little bit over there with the higher band. And like I mentioned, you get 3 bands. Volume Shaper is pretty awesome. I am definitely a fan, to be honest. I really enjoy using Volume Shaper. It's something I've used for a while. Now, if you are trying to mimic compression settings and don't want things to completely cut out, you don't have to draw the envelope all the way down. You can even automate this mix knob if you don't want things to sidechain in certain places. I'm a fan. I'm honestly sold on Volume Shaper. It's been great to work with. Last but not least, we have the if all else fails method, and by far this is the most tedious, so to say, of sidechaining methods, but honestly something that shouldn't be overlooked too much, and that is sidechaining with utility. Yeah, you can actually go in and draw in these nice little markers here, and instead of using Volume Shaper or something like that, you can literally just go in by hand and draw the utility cuts. It's super simple, super easy, nothing to worry about. And just like that, you're game. One upside to using utility, it doesn't click, or it doesn't click nearly as much as a Volume Shaper or a compressor. I mean, usually you can fix that by upping the attack, but that can also add like unnecessary noise to your transients. I don't like dealing with all this extra attack settings. I will usually, if I'm running into issues like that, go in at the end of the project and then redo the sidechains once I'm committed to the drum pattern with the utility, because that is the only downside of the utility. While it's a super clean sidechain, if you do have your drums in audio, you can really zoom in and have the volume envelope perfectly match the drum, which I don't have here. That's just the click. So I honestly like sidechaining with utility. It's just really annoying when you change any sort of drum pattern. You have to go in and essentially update it on every group or every instance. You can do that either by copying the same instance over and over again, but my best advice, work with something like a Volume Shaper or a compressor. If you get to the end of the project, things aren't working out well, you can do some sort of manual fader or utility sidechain. There's a lot of methods. I've also seen people do sidechaining with gates. I mean, Hell, there's so many ways you can do this. It's just a few. They all have their own purposes. I like using compression and things of that nature for house, or if I want really drastic, kind of obviously compressed, like almost fading and ramping up, just overly sidechain sounds, compressors can be helpful. Volume shaper seems to be the best, most surgical when you're getting an exact cut. It's great. And if all else fails, utility also works. And if you're collabing with someone and for some reason they don't have compressor like Pro MB, or you're wanting to use that, or they don't have volume shaper, you can just do it with utility. That's always easy. That's about it. Hopefully I was able to help you learn something about sidechaining, gave you some new ideas. This is just for sidechaining. I mean, there's so many different things you can do with this. LFO tool and volume shaper can be used as great creative tools too for adding rhythmic values to sound. So go out, give it a try, find what works for you, and hopefully you learn something. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have a great day.